A lot of high spots there, you know.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
He's gone through a lot of changes. I mean, it wasn't easy.
To impress the public, I think the only thing he can do is walk on water. So it's about all he's got left to do.
Prolific. I mean, you know, he was prolific. That's the word for Paul McCartney.
Why aren't I a gardener? It's a much more peaceful life. Beatles, that was it pretty much, you know, those were my friends. And now things are easing up on our problems that we had after the Beatles. So, you know, George and Ringo are my friends again, which is very nice. It was a bit sticky for a while there.
The artist in Paul is sensitive, and he's, I'm sure he's very sensitive and very sensitive to reactions of what he does on record, that people are going to say, hey, Paul, that was a great record, I really like it. I'm sure that would mean a lot to him if someone told him that he was doing all right, you know.
I think if you're a professional, you always want to kind of do well, you want it accepted, you know.
The crowd still scream for Paul McCartney, as we see in this edition of Cover Story. Now more than 25 years have passed since the four boys from Liverpool, England, John Lennon, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, and Paul McCartney made their first record and created the phenomenon called the Beatles. In 1970, the group broke up and McCartney had to go out on his own. Paul became a superstar solo performing artist and the most successful popular music composer in the world, selling more than 100 million albums and earning more than 60 gold records. In 1969, Paul married New York still photographer Linda Eastman. Today, they live in Rye, England, outside London, with their 4 children. Linda joined Paul in his Wings band and co-starred with him in the 1984 feature film, Give My Regards to Broad Street. In this Paul McCartney edition of Cover Story, we're going to discover why yesterday really is only yesterday for Paul McCartney as he presses on with his life and music.
Right there, that's it, yeah. Oh, when you feel the stress, don't just stand there. Tell me the rest.
At one point, Liverpool was the second city in England. London was the biggie, and then Liverpool. Slave trade and all that stuff, you know, it's a big industrial port. So the people got this feeling of being important. You're from a big centre like that, you get a sort of arrogance. It's not a harmful arrogance, but you think you're just a little bit better than the people in the suburbs, you know. My family's big Liverpool family. And I like that thing, I like a lot of people, like Italian families, you know, I like all that stuff. Kind of feel Irish, Italian, you know the thing, I mean, working class. I'm not Polish, whatever, doesn't matter. Working class, loose families, a lot of them, who speak their mind and go for it. But my dad had a jazz band called Jim Mack's Band. And his father used to be in a brass band, you know, where they all play the brass instruments. And his dad used to play what's called the E-flat bass. Boom, 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 that one. And his dad used to say to my dad, what is all this tin can music you're playing, you know? And it'd be Chicago, Chicago, and he's rubbish, you know. Now, in my day, we had nice boom, 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 boom tunes, you know. My dad was a trumpeter. He'd bought me a trumpet. And I figured out I couldn't play the trumpet and sing at the same time. So I traded it in for a guitar. And the great thing then was rock and roll was just starting, really, because the whole period before that had been strange sort of netherworld of sort of jokey songs. Gilly, gilly, hats and fair for cats and Ellenbogen by the sea, he. Love it. All jolly, jolly songs. And then suddenly it was like, Sweet Little 16. Whoa. And that was like, oh, I really got the chills with Rock Around the Clock. And then I met John, who was an idol, because he was 1.5 years older. So I started writing with him. And we had terrible lines like, you know, she was just 17, she'd never been a beauty queen. Oh, you know, it's like, but we changed it to You Know What I Mean. It became a kind of little rock and roll anthem. You know what I mean. When we started with the Beatles, we could see that we had something. And when things would go wrong, we'd always say, well, something will happen, rather than taking the pessimistic point of view. So it wasn't any moment, but there was a time when we realized that the Beatles was going to work, and we weren't going to just be another group. We could see from our audience they were singling us out as something special.
Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I yesterday.
They'd written things like Yesterday and songs like that, and he was getting upset at that stage of the game, literally because he wanted to sit down and just play something that he considered to be very nice, and you just couldn't hear a thing. I mean, it was Ladies and Gentlemen, the beat.
That's it.
That was it. And it just went on like that until they finished.
Meeting the Queen, Her Majesty, great lady. Like her very much. Very knowledgeable. She's surprising, you know, you think, well, being Queen's a hard job. I mean, how's she going to know about Beatle music? But when you think about it, like Elizabeth, I mean, it's a little bit flash this, but I think it's true in a way. Elizabeth I had sort of Sir Walter Raleigh during her reign. Elizabeth II had the Beatles. I mean, I'm not comparing us, but it's true. This is what we're one of the events that have happened during her reign. So she's quite hip to it all. It was always going to be like that, though. You know, when the Beatles split up, I think all four of us realized it was a case of follow that. And at first I did find it very difficult and did do a lot of justifying. I don't bother so much now. You don't like me? Tough. Because, you know, you grow up and you suddenly think, I can't handle all this. You know, I like me. And, you know, I'm not going to sort of, you know, go crazy trying to get everyone to, please, you know, accept me. I'm all right. You know, it's terrible to go around like that. Nobody has to go around like that. Most people, you know, they just say, don't like it, don't buy it, or whatever, you know. So I'm getting a lot better on all of that now. I figure I've done a bit anyway, even since the Beatles. You know, I've done things now.
Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday.
Real arguments, real high spots. It's great. It's very interesting being married. It's a strange thing. Two people, you know, opposite sexes, in our case, you know, suddenly like living and sleeping with each other, and it's a weird thing. I think it's great. It's a very special experience, I think.
I met Paul at a club. We had both gone down with different people. I had been photographing the animals, who were all friends of mine. So we were at a great table right next to the group. And then Paul walked in with some people, and our eyes met.
Been married 17 years, you know, that's something to actually like each other at the end of that. But it's not always swinging. You know, I think that's what I'm talking about. That's the other interesting side of it. You're living with someone that you don't necessarily know. You don't always sort of know. You know, you're always learning. You're finding out about them, which is the fun. There's a lot of action. The kids, I've got 4 kids. It's a lot of action. But you see each little age group. You know, I've got a 23-year-old and I've got an 8-year-old and 2 in between. So you see the music they're into, and you see their excitement at going to a concert. It's no longer your own excitement at going to a concert, maybe. You just kind of see things through their eyes. And that's all new for me. So that bit of it I like, you know. I don't really live too rich, you know. You see these programs, Rich and Famous, and, you know, I've got money and stuff, and I enjoy it. But I don't really have the fleet of limos and millions of chauffeurs. And it's not like Dynasty at our house. I'd rather do it how we did it when I was a kid, and try and bring up my kids the same way as my dad brought me up.
We have the best kids. I think because we spend time with our kids. I think there's a big problem in the world right now, because I think a lot of people have had children and didn't realize it's not just you have a child and isn't it cute. You have to love that child and direct that child. You know, to give, to have relationships. A lot of people don't think of their kids as friends. My kids are my best friends. They really are. I can tell them anything, they can tell me anything. And I think it's important.
I think it's tough because your dad, you've got the position of authority, which isn't easy.
I never thought I've married a Beatle. People say to me, you've married a Beatle. It's like, oh yeah. When the Beatles split up, he really didn't want them to split up. He was blamed for it because that, again, was the press, and they got it wrong. He wanted the Beatles to go on forever, and he felt very naked when they broke up.
I think I was feeling like just the longer I waited with another day of no work, another day of nothing to go to, the more I was just getting stagnant. It's a bit like sort of after an operation where you want to rest, but you've got to push it. And I just had to push something.
She can't be found.
The only way I knew how to do it was just get back on the boards again with anything. So I hit upon the idea of just getting, you know, a bunch of people around me who would play, and we could just go out, and it didn't matter if it was big time or small time or anything, it'd still be just playing.
She'll be here.
When I joined Wings, I should have said no. But Paul just said, hey, why don't we start a group? Here's middle C, you could play keyboard, here's middle C, learn the piano, and you can do a few harmonies, and we'll be together, and it'll be such fun. I went, oh great, forgetting this is Paul McCartney, right? Thinking this, okay, I could join a little punk group or something. Anyway, so I tried rehearsing, I tried learning all these very hard bits. I didn't do that bad.
She was ridiculed. He was ridiculed for doing it. I mean,
There was an awful joke.
well, it's like taking your wife to work, isn't it? You know, and all the guys are saying, you know, what's going on.
There was an awful joke, because I think sometimes people tend to forget that Paul and people in show business are actually humans. I think they forget it sometimes. There was a dreadful joke going around about name a dog with wings, Linda McCartney, you know. And I think people really do forget they're talking about human beings when they put some of these things they put in reviews, or, you know, why shouldn't a guy have his missus there? It might be great psychological support for him. He might really need it. They should be grateful that he's out on the road and happy that whatever it takes to get him on stage is there.
I say, you know, Linda was there on keyboards, terrified out of her mind all the time. That's about the craziest thing you can do, bring in your wife who's not had any previous musical experience. Well, you know, people couldn't accept that just we wanted to go back to square one and just become a little skiffle group again. And we were back at that stage. But it was the only thing I could think of to do, you know, and I thought I was doing just what I knew how to do.
Wings always did a thing to my mind. Wings was always entertaining. I never, ever heard anything from Wings that wasn't good or wasn't something creative or entertaining, you know. Wings was a group that just didn't know how to stop with the creativity. They just didn't know how to stop, so they kept going. You know what I mean? They just kept going and going.
Somebody ringing a bell, someone knocking at the door. Somebody ringing a bell. Well, do me a favor, open the door.
So there's always that little moment before an opening night or something. Oh, what am I in this business for? Why aren't I a gardener? It's a much more peaceful life. Pay's not as good. But do you know the rewards? Or just, you know, you go through all of that, then you get up there and it's incredible, and you think, this is why I'm not a gardener. I like this plonking around too much.
I hope you're having fun, baby.
Paul's film, Give My Regards to Broad Street, surprised people more than anything else because it was a serious story about the music world presented as a fantasy. Once again, Paul McCartney expressed himself in his own terms rather than according to the expectations of the world.
The whole thing started for me out of wanting to do a film, wanting to actually just be involved in the process of making a film. It was a gentle English film, you know, sort of slightly wacky, offbeat sort of thing, really. But like I say, you know, what are you going to do? There's no violence, no sex. How's it going to be a hit? I really do like creating a song or helping create a set or a costume or a story. And fantasy really interests me a lot. I think there's some good things in it, you know. I was slightly disappointed, obviously, that it didn't just kind of do great. I think it's not a bad flick, actually, you know, looking back on it. I think that Broad Street, maybe it's in the long term, it'll settle down.
But I thought it was good, and I got a feeling it'll be one of them things that I'll see in a couple of years and really enjoy.
Dad, hey Dad, when's the show going to start? Hey Dad.
Now look, son, this only happens once every couple of 100 years. If you don't pipe down, I will not bring you again. Shut up.
Paul's next film effort, the animated featurette Rupert and the Frog Song, which he co-wrote and produced with his wife Linda, has become a hit all over the world. McCartney grew up with the Rupert the Bear stories and introduced Linda to England's beloved cartoon character. And the rest, as they say, is history.
He's a very big star in England, Rupert, anyway. He's
He was
Mickey
when I was a
Mouse.
kid.
Yeah, he's Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
He's our Mickey Mouse, yeah.
They rang me up, and this time they said, we've got a band. You don't have to just play your piano, you can bring your guitar this time. And it was like a colossal band. It's all the best British musicians, well, most of them anyway, you know, fabulous band to play in front of. I'm singing with someone like Tina's great. I'd never sung with her before. And she's just such an up. And someone like me who admires her anyway, you know, I love sort of R&B. I love my R&B, you know, so just to actually be allowed to be on the same stage will do me. So that rekindled my interest in the live thing.
Well, he writes just what he wants to write, and he gets away with it. I mean, I think he does a lot of things tongue-in-cheek as well. Like when he writes things like Mary Had a Little Lamb, after yesterday, it's going to be a bit cheeky.
Well, there used to be a saying, I don't know if it was around over here, but over in England, there used to be a saying that someone was so big that they could record Mary Had a Little Lamb, and he did.
Yeah, just tried it out.
You got to own up. Yeah, that's how big he is, yep.
Because the minute you take risks, somebody says, oh, I like your old stuff, when you know, McCartney ballads. So I wanted to sort of get away from that and just do something simpler. So the idea became, let's just go down the subway.
Darling, I love you very, very, very much. And I really am relying on your touch. But with all these people listening in, I don't know where I ought to begin.
It was a bit risky because, you know, there was like no budget to shore it all up. It's that you know, what you see is what you get there, you know. So the people on the tube had to deliver.
I know it really wouldn't be a crime. I say I want to love you all the time. But with all these people listening in, I don't know where I ought to begin. Maybe we should have a secret code. If before we both get ready to explode. When you want me to love you, well, just tell me the prayer. I'm right there, that's it, yeah.
I've always tried to just do my own stuff to keep me interested, for one thing. I'm much easier on myself these days about all that stuff. Occasionally I'll be overcritical, but generally I sort of think life's not long enough, you know. 4 kids and stuff, you know, I don't need the problems. That's a funny feeling when you've done as much as I have to actually still think there's stuff left, because some interviewers do say, Paul, what's left? You know, you go, not much. You know, but there's so much left.
Next Sunday's cover story features American singer Rita Coolidge.